Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. NASA scientists say that when dinosaurs lived on Earth, there were still active volcanoes on the moon with flowing lava fields. Like most mammals with legs, cats have only 4 toes on their back paws, despite having 5 on their front paws. It is believed this helps them run faster. Bananas grow upside down from how we are used to seeing them. The bottom part actually always faces the sky, and their distinctive curve occurs because they grow toward the sun. Elephants, rhinoceroses, hippopotamuses, and sloths are the only mammals in the world that cannot jump. Although when rhinoceroses and hippopotamuses run, there is a moment when all their feet leave the ground. That could be considered a small jump. If you wanted to cook a chicken using only the energy from a slap, you would have to hit it at a speed of 5,461.94 feet per second. In other words, extremely fast. On average, women blink more than men. There was a group of people who conducted that research. Flamingos are not actually pink. Their feathers are gray, but they have that characteristic color because they get it from their shrimp diet, which contains a natural pink pigment called canthaxanthin. Flamingos in zoos must be given this substance artificially so they appear pink. On the surface of a black hole, it is almost certain that it is still the same day that this phenomenon was created, if we consider that a day lasts 24 hours. This is due to time dilation, which makes time practically stop inside it. More than 100 million people in China live on less than $1 a day, and 35 million live in caves. They still do not have houses. Many of these caves are in rural areas and surprisingly provide efficient natural thermal insulation year-round. Scientists finally reached the conclusion that the chicken came first, not the egg, since the protein that makes eggshells hard is only produced by these animals. So, mystery solved. The gene that has been favored in tomatoes so they have the characteristic uniform red color is also responsible for them losing almost all their flavor. Something similar happened with red apples. Scientists discovered a dinosaur tail perfectly preserved in amber. It is completely covered in feathers. This discovery confirmed that many dinosaurs had feathers similar to modern birds. In 1895, in the state of Ohio in the United States, there were only 2 cars, and even so, somehow, they crashed into each other. A large Starbucks coffee contains 4 times more caffeine than a can of Red Bull. This is due to its larger volume and the natural caffeine concentration of coffee. There is an artificial reef of 87.5 acres in Florida built entirely from used tires, except it failed because marine life did not like it. Nothing lives there, so it actually ended up being more pollution. There is a star called Betelgeuse that is expected to explode soon, and by soon, I mean between 1 and 1 million years. It will become a supernova that will be visible from planet Earth without needing a telescope, and it could even be seen during the day. Until before the Industrial Revolution, pillows were not used, and the ones that existed were made of stone. They were used to keep royal hairstyles intact, among other things, but not so much for resting. Legend says that Napoleon's army, one day as they were passing through Egypt, decided to attack the famous sculpture of the Sphinx and broke its nose. However, in reality, when Napoleon passed by, the Sphinx was already incomplete. According to records, it was destroyed in 1378. Some people who are experts in cheesemaking claim that if music is played for blocks of cheese during the aging process, the type of music will end up modifying its flavor. They say that the cheese that was played hip-hop music developed the strongest flavor. 90% of the world's species live in the ocean, and it is to be expected since the planet is made up of 30% land and 70% ocean. Do you want to protect yourself from the flu? Eat red peppers. Red peppers have 2.5 times more vitamin C than oranges. In addition, vitamin C strengthens the immune system and helps the body fight respiratory infections. The Inuit, or Eskimos of North America, have been using glasses to protect themselves from the sun for more than 2,000 years, although the ones they used back then were a bit different from the ones we know now. A glass of apple juice has 115 calories, while a glass of Coca-Cola has 95. Both are full of sugar. If you soak potatoes in hydrogen peroxide and leave them for a while, the peroxide will turn into H2O, water ready to drink. But I do not recommend trying it. If you point a laser at an airplane in the United States, you can be sentenced to 20 years in prison and fined $250,000. If our galaxy, the Milky Way, collided with another galaxy, it is most likely that no planets or celestial bodies would collide. This is because galaxies are so large that everything in them is separated by thousands and thousands of miles. An arcade machine placed in Chicago in 1981 had a system allowing players to upload their photo if they achieved a high score. It had to be removed after just one day because someone had already uploaded an inappropriate photo. The Bacardi logo is a bat because there is a species of these animals that pollinates sugarcane and protects it from insects. The drinks from this brand are made from sugarcane. In the 1980s, Lego made bricks out of 14-karat gold and gave them to employees who had worked more than 25 years in their factories. Today, these collector pieces are valued at more than $15,000. It is possible to hear the heartbeat of a blue whale from up to 1.9 miles away. People who have had a bone marrow transplant carry the donor's DNA in their blood, but in their saliva and hair, they have their own DNA. This has caused people to be arrested incorrectly because of this. The Alaska wood frog can go without going to the bathroom for almost 8 months. It does this as a form of hibernation. Microbes in its body purify everything it stores, which helps it survive even the coldest winters. There are some viral videos about McDonald's hamburgers that never rot, and this is true, but it is not because they have mysterious chemicals or anything like that. It is simply because dehydration and the low humidity they are kept in is the same method used to prepare dried meat. A blue whale can consume up to 480 million calories of food in a single bite. They mainly eat small crustaceans, known as krill. Studies conducted at Indiana University claim that watching cat videos on the internet does have a positive impact on our energy and emotions. In Japan, there is an island called Tashirojima, which is also known as Cat Island. In that place, there are many more stray cats than people. In the next 30 seconds, you will produce on average 72 million red blood cells. You will shed 174,000 skin cells, and you will have 25 different thoughts. During the presentation of the first iPhone in the year 2007, Steve Jobs made a prank call to a Starbucks cafe. He ordered 4,000 lattes. That was the first public call ever made on one of these phones. After that, he told them it was a joke and that the number was wrong. The bleeding tooth fungus is as strange as it looks, with that weird liquid coming out of it and with its teeth underneath, which are barely visible, but are there. It is actually not poisonous. The rock band Kiss has more greatest hits compilation albums than regular albums with new songs. They have 21 greatest hits albums and 20 regular ones. The plates used to print money are modeled by hand, which is why they have their distinctive line and dot style. The people who do this can take up to 1 year to make one of these plates, although this technique is already being replaced by digital methods. Almost all the restaurants that appeared on the television show Kitchen Nightmares closed their doors shortly afterward, even though by the end of the show they were better and cleaner. With this show, Chef Gordon Ramsay became famous for how he scolded the staff of these restaurants. The first alarm clock was invented by the Greeks in the year 250. It consisted of 2 containers with water that slowly drained depending on how long they wanted to sleep. It is believed that the philosopher Plato also invented an improved version of the alarm clock. Humans and dogs are the only species observed that can receive directions or visual signals directly from the eyes of other individuals. Dogs only do this with humans, and not with other animals. After holding an online vote to decide his middle name, actor Macaulay Culkin, known for the Home Alone movies, legally changed his name to Macaulay Culkin. Prairie dogs have complex ways of communicating that are so advanced they have different sounds depending on the predator they identify. In addition, it was discovered that they use sentences to describe them. The first satellite that was launched, Sputnik 1, reached Earth's orbit in 1957. Now, 63 years later, there are around 10,000 satellites in the sky, and their number is increasing exponentially. A company called Good Times dedicated itself to making poor versions of Disney movies. It took public domain stories that Disney's movies were based on and made versions that were suspiciously similar, so much so that Disney sued them at one point. However, they only managed to force them to place a label on the cover clarifying that it was not the original, so people would not buy them by mistake. Sparklers that are commonly used during Christmas and New Year are more dangerous than they seem, since they can reach temperatures of more than 2,732 degrees Fahrenheit, enough to melt aluminum. It is recommended that after putting them out, they be placed in a container with cold water to prevent forest fires. More intelligent or competent people tend to underestimate themselves, while less competent people believe they are very brilliant, and many times this gives them more confidence even if they fail. This is called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it was proposed by social psychologists in 1999. British inventor Ken Kramer proposed the idea of a portable digital music player with a screen and directional buttons. Nothing unusual if it had been today, but his proposal to investors was actually made in 1979. At that time, the Walkman was just about to become popular. Despite the famous slogan, technically diamonds are not forever. Eventually, they degrade and turn into graphite, but we are talking about millions of years. In 2015, 3 prisoners from a maximum security prison defeated the Harvard University team in a debate competition. Have you noticed that it tends to rain more during weekends? It is not just your imagination. In fact, the accumulation of pollution from cars during the week causes thicker clouds to form, which leads to more rainfall. Have you ever wondered what happens if you open the door of a plane in mid-flight? Even if you try, it is almost impossible. Because of the pressure difference, you would have to be Hulk to open it. In China, an unauthorized sequel to Harry Potter was sold. The book was similar to The Hobbit, and they only changed the names to characters from the famous Wizard saga. When you lose weight, 84% of the fat that is lost turns into carbon dioxide and leaves the body through the lungs during breathing. A Japanese company sells a spray that smells like a cat's head. Some cat owners like the smell of their cat's heads, comparing it to the smell of freshly baked bread. So this company spent years perfecting this perfume until they managed to recreate it. Scientists conducted an experiment where they put glasses on a praying mantis to study its vision, since these insects are the only invertebrates that perceive depth. And now, they are also the ones that look the coolest. 100 years ago, people spent more money on clothing than they do now. Surprisingly, on average, 17% of their income was allocated to buying outfits, and they took fashion more seriously than we think. Gunpowder, which, as we know, was invented in China, was used long before to make fireworks. Many years passed before it was first used to make firearms. The first Super Smash Bros. Game was not planned to include Nintendo characters. It was only going to be a normal fighting game, but the developers secretly added Mario, Link, and Samus into a demo they showed to Nintendo, which they liked so much that they decided to allow them to include all the characters. A Japanese man loved basketball so much and wanted to learn more that he decided to travel to the United States and stay outside the arena where the University of Michigan team plays with the hope that coach Tom Izzo would teach him. To everyone's surprise, they let him in, and he received lessons from the coach. There are cheese producers who paint their product yellow to make it appear higher quality. This deceptive practice has existed since the 17th century. Fortunately, there are now food regulatory agencies. The planet Uranus was the first to be discovered using a telescope in 1781, and Neptune was the first to be discovered using only the power of mathematics, since an irregularity in Uranus's orbit was observed, something that could only be caused by another planet. The company Foxconn, which makes almost all the components of the iPhone, has reduced its number of employees from 110,000 to 50,000 in recent years, thanks to the implementation of robots. Soccer player Ronaldinho once lost a sponsorship contract with Coca-Cola that paid him 600,000 euros per year, simply because he attended a press conference holding a Pepsi. Rats like to play, and if you tickle them, they make a sound that is the equivalent of human laughter. They are smarter than you think. As economic growth and quality of life increase, the birth rate tends to decrease. Taking this into account, it is believed that the world's population will stabilize at 9 billion by the year 2050. In the first drafts of the script for the movie Back to the Future, the time machine was a modified refrigerator. However, this was changed because of the probability that children would watch the movie and climb into a refrigerator at home to imitate it. So, it was changed to the DeLorean car that we all came to know. Crocodiles and birds are the only remaining archosaurs. Their common ancestor lived 240 million years ago. This means crocodiles are more closely related to birds than to lizards. In one spoonful of soil, there are more microorganisms than people in the entire world. Soil contains the greatest concentration of biomass on the planet. The games Pokemon Gold and Silver were planned as the final games of the series. Fighting the previous gym leaders and the protagonist of the first games was intended as the perfect ending. However, as we know, it was not the last, and new ones continue to be released to this day. Gravity is not instantaneous. It moves at the speed of light. That means that if the sun suddenly disappeared, Earth would still continue in its orbit for 8 minutes and 20 seconds, which is the same amount of time it would take for the last ray of light to reach the planet. The investment bank JP Morgan stored all information about risky investments in Excel spreadsheets, so they depended on data entry workers not making typing errors. When too many mistakes accumulated, they had to restructure and face many lawsuits. This cost them $6 billion in 2012, all because they relied on Excel. A single arm of a starfish can regenerate an entire starfish. This is possible if the arm retains part of the central disc that contains vital organs. The creator of Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, helped in real life to solve 2 cases of wrongly accused people, managing to get them released from prison. The Spanish conquistadors who arrived in America did not realize at first the true value and rarity of platinum, since they only cared about gold. At that time, platinum was used to make fake gold coins. So when these coins were discovered, they were collected and thrown into the sea. There are kilos and kilos of platinum in the sea because of this. To ensure no information leaked about the movie Star Wars: The Force Awakens before filming, the scripts were printed on dark red pages. This was done to prevent photocopying, although photos could still be taken. Leonardo da Vinci could write with one hand while drawing with the other. Singer Lady Gaga always hired ghost hunters to check every hotel room she stayed in before she arrived, until one day she decided to buy her own ghost hunting equipment. She once declared that a ghost named Ryan followed her everywhere. There is a type of tree that produces 40 different types of fruit each year. The way of cultivating and maintaining these trees is considered an art. It is achieved through careful grafting that combines multiple varieties into a single trunk. If the Walmart retail chain, including its employees, were a country, it would have a larger population than 95 countries and would rank 25th among the world's largest economies. The cast of the movie Shrek did not meet each other until after they finished recording their voices, when they had to do promotional tours. Less than 15 years ago, fewer than 500 people knew how to ski in China. Currently, more than 5 million Chinese people visit ski resorts each year. The first tweet was made on March 21, 2006. This legendary tweet, which says something like, "Just setting up my Twitter," was made by Jack Dorsey, one of the co-founders of the site. Currently, more photos are taken every 2 minutes than all the photos taken during the 19th century. When a cat walks toward you with its tail pointing upward, it means it is excited to see you. It is a sign of trust, friendly greeting, and comfort in your presence. 60 million years ago, penguins the size of humans existed. In 2019, fossilized remains of this species were found in New Zealand. There is a crustacean called the Hoff crab that survives extreme conditions in the deep sea. It is named in honor of actor and singer David Hasselhoff. In 1981, 8 of the 10 highest-grossing movies were original stories. Today, only 1 out of 10 is an original story, and not a sequel or remake. The normal pregnancy of elephants lasts 2 years. It is the longest gestation period among mammals, and allows the development of their large brains. Actor Keanu Reeves' name means cool breeze in Hawaiian, and it is not a stage name, it is his real name. In fact, one day his agent gave him the worst advice of all time when he tried to convince him to change his name to Chuck Spadina so it would sound more commercial. The guitar solo that lasts many minutes at the end of the famous song Free Bird by the group Lynyrd Skynyrd was added only to give the vocalist a break between songs. In the city of Sao Paulo, Brazil, large outdoor advertising, including billboards, was banned. More than 300,000 were removed. After their removal, neglected and dirty areas of the city that had been hidden behind advertisements were revealed. The characteristic sound turkeys make is only produced by male turkeys. They use it mainly during courtship to attract females and show territorial dominance. There is a city in Nebraska, United States, called Minowi that has only one resident. She is Elsie Eiler, an elderly woman who manages the library, the bar, and all matters that take place there. The Disney World amusement park in Florida is the same size as San Francisco, or twice the size of Manhattan Island. It is impossible to breathe while smiling. This is obviously not true, but I wanted to make you smile. The Chicago Cubs baseball team won the World Series in 2016, but before that, their last championship occurred in 1908, when the Ottoman Empire still existed. The Ottoman Empire would continue to exist until 1922, when it was replaced by the Republic of Turkey. In 2013, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg spent around $30 million buying all the houses next to his mansion to ensure his privacy. The Duke of Wellington did not consider his victory against Napoleon at Waterloo to be his greatest personal achievement. Instead, the Battle of Assaye was the one he remembered as his greatest victory. Mickey Mouse and many animated characters from early cartoons wear gloves because it makes their hands easier to animate. Additionally, Walt Disney stated that gloves were used to make the character appear more human, since mouse hands would have looked strange. We do not know for certain how the moon formed, but one of the most accepted theories is that a planet or very large asteroid collided with Earth millions of years ago, ejecting material that later combined to form the moon. Samples from the Apollo missions have shown that the moon's composition is very similar to that of Earth. It is possible to see a rainbow as a complete circle if certain conditions are met. They are usually seen from airplanes or very tall buildings. The Cherokees believed that plants, by observing the bad things in the world, created different plants for each illness, and when a healer did not know which one to use, the spirit of the plants would indicate it. Studies indicate that rats dream about finding food or running through mazes. All mammals enter the rapid eye movement sleep stage, and therefore all mammals dream. So follow your dreams. The small extra pockets in denim jeans were originally designed to store pocket watches that were commonly used in the previous century. The pockets remained, but the watches did not. Most characters in Toy Story movies do not blink both eyes at the same time. This is used in animation with characters who are clumsy or awkward, but Pixar uses it to remind people that they are toys. According to the World Happiness Report, the happiest country in the world in 2019 is Finland. Liquid tungsten is so hot that if you poured it into a river of lava, the lava would freeze the tungsten. That means it would solidify this metal. A day on Venus lasts longer than an entire year on Venus. This happens because its orbit around the Sun is faster than its rotation, although the difference is very small. Before 1950, doctors believed that exercise was dangerous for people over 40 years old. Now, the opposite is believed. Moderate exercise is good at any age. When the most famous mime in France had to go to court in 1836, hundreds of people went to see him, and not necessarily to support him, but because they were curious to finally hear his voice. During his explorations in India, Alexander the Great encountered an isolated tribe that had not yet discovered how to make fire. A calorie is the amount of heat energy required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree at a pressure of 1 atmosphere. This gives you an idea of how much you would need to run to burn off that gordita you ate earlier. The most expensive book ever sold in history is the Codex Leicester, which is a collection of notes and drawings by Leonardo da Vinci. It was auctioned for a little over $30 million, and the buyer was none other than Bill Gates. Before alarms were invented to wake people up, there were people hired to walk around each morning and throw dried peas at people's windows to wake them up. I wonder, who woke up the pea throwers? Lizzie Grant was a pop star whose career never took off. All traces of her had to be erased from the internet so she could later re-emerge as Lana Del Rey. And as we know, she became very successful. The tongue of blue whales can weigh more than a small elephant. It can exceed 4,409.25 pounds and is essential for feeding on krill in massive quantities. A song called Circus Gallop was created specifically to test automatic pianos and is impossible for a human to play. But with enough patience and dedication, 5 people on the same piano can play it almost the same. Or 1 person with 10 hands could also do it. It is possible to celebrate New Year in Sydney, Australia, and then fly to Los Angeles and celebrate New Year again. In fact, there is a company that offers this service using a private jet. This is the closest thing you can experience to time travel. When the country of Israel was founded, physicist Albert Einstein was offered the position of President of International Affairs, but he declined the offer. There is a law in Argentina that states the president automatically becomes the godparent of the 7th child born in a family if the previous 6 were boys and the 7th is a girl, or vice versa. The president is required to pay for their education. The residents of the small town of Marotikal in India began playing chess as an alternative to drinking after alcohol was banned there. Now it is known as Chess Village, and some state champions have come from there. It is said that during Cold War times, the President of the United States had a red telephone that was directly connected to call the leader of the Soviet Union in case of any emergency. Except that, in reality, this supposed telephone never existed since they used other impractical methods such as messengers and radio waves. 90% of the cells that make up our bodies are not human. They are mainly bacteria and fungi, which means we are only 10% ourselves. The structure that holds the record for having the most bathrooms of any in the world is Wembley Stadium in London, England. In total, it has 2,618 restrooms. According to research, recording Rihanna's hit Man Down cost $75,000. The expense to promote it was $1 million, and the lyrics of this song were written in just 12 minutes during a brainstorming session between hired songwriters. The original voice of classic movie trailers, Don LaFontaine, offered to record an answering machine message for anyone who asked him, but he stopped doing it because too many people wanted to have their personalized message. When the United States Navy banned alcohol on ships in 1914, on the last day, they held a huge party to drink what remained and invited ships from other countries to join. Weeks later, many of those guests would become enemies when World War I began. In the United States, there are more vacant homes than homeless people. Many are empty due to speculation, abandonment, or because they are in the process of being sold or repaired. The person who has won the most Academy Awards is Walt Disney with 26, most of them for animated shorts. But the record for acting awards belongs to Katharine Hepburn, who won 4 times. One of the reasons your lungs feel relaxed when you walk through a pine forest is because in the conifers of these trees, there is an anti-inflammatory compound called alpha-pinene that is used in the treatment of asthma. Yogurt was discovered in Mongolia and Mesopotamia 7,000 years ago, where people transported milk in animal bladder bags and later realized that natural enzymes in the bags caused the milk to ferment. 2,200 years ago, the Greek mathematician, astronomer, and geographer Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of Earth using his own mathematical methods without even traveling outside Alexandria, where he lived. The largest giant squid ever found weighed almost 1 ton. These creatures usually live in the depths, which is why we have rarely been able to observe them. When ancient people described sea monsters, they were most likely talking about these animals. The lead singer of the band Iron Maiden, Bruce Dickinson, is considered a modern polymath, according to the publication Intelligent Life, because he has knowledge of and practices many things from different fields. He has a commercial pilot license, has hosted radio and television shows, writes novels, makes his own beer, and was in the top 10 in fencing in the United Kingdom. During World War II, a campaign was launched encouraging housewives to donate excess fat and oils left over from cooking to the United States Army to produce explosives. At the Olympic Games of 1904, held in St. Louis, Missouri, United States, sports that would now be considered strange and even funny were included, such as rock throwing and climbing a greased pole. Actor Joe Pesci, known for playing Italian mobsters in movies and for being the thief in Home Alone, also has a music career and was already very well known in the jazz scene before dedicating himself to acting. He still records albums today. According to a study by the University of Cambridge, children get greater satisfaction from their pets than from their brothers and sisters. Children with pets showed higher levels of happiness and lower levels of emotional conflict. Jupiter's moon Io has something similar to tides even though it has no water. These tides are made of rock. The gravity of Jupiter and its other moons causes its surface to move like waves the size of a 394-foot building. The sound produced by Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe is so loud that it can be heard from a distance of 24.85 miles. There is a form of obsessive-compulsive disorder in which those who have it feel the need to correct every grammatical error they encounter. They called it grammatical pedantry syndrome. In 2011, 2 high-budget Hollywood movies released 5 months apart ended up having the same story, including the same ending, and they also lasted the same amount of time. No Strings Attached with Ashton Kutcher and Natalie Portman, and Friends with Benefits with Mila Kunis and Justin Timberlake. 8% of human DNA is made up of ancient viruses that infected humans thousands and even millions of years ago. The air inside potato chip bags is not actually normal air. It is nitrogen gas used to keep them fresh as if newly made. In addition, they are inflated so they do not break during transport. In December 2015, air quality in the city of Beijing, China became so bad that activities such as driving and attending school were prohibited. Barbecuing was also strictly prohibited. World War II did not officially end until 1990. In that year, Russia and Germany signed the treaty that completely ended that conflict. The youngest athlete to win an Olympic medal is gymnast Dimitrios Lundras, who finished third in a gymnastics event at the 1896 Olympic Games when he was only 10 years old. In 2020, Hen Zaza from Syria was going to become the youngest athlete to participate in the Olympic Games. However, Tokyo 2020 was postponed. Canada is the country where the most donuts are consumed per capita and where there are more specialty shops dedicated to this food. The Tim Hortons chain has greatly contributed to this national popularity. In 2014, a stray dog named Arthur followed a Swedish team in a cross-country race of 427.5 miles through the Amazon jungle, simply because one of them gave him some meat near the beginning of the race. After that, they adopted him and took him to Sweden. The famous scene that ends the movie The Graduate, in which the protagonists stay there like, "What now?" was actually like that because the editor who was replacing the director at that moment forgot to yell "cut," and the actors, who did not want to break character, just stayed there without knowing what to do. The scene stayed like that, and now it is one of the most memorable in cinema. The small country of Liechtenstein has only one prison that can hold a maximum of 20 people. However, any prisoner who needs to be incarcerated for more than 2 years is sent to Austria or Switzerland, which are only a few miles away. Italy is going to become the first country where a subject dedicated to climate change study will be mandatory in schools. At least 1 hour per week will be dedicated to this topic. Although they are treated as if they were a different variety, green peppers are actually just a less mature version of red, orange, and yellow peppers. In 1998, a survey was conducted in Iceland that concluded that almost half of the people in that country believed in elves. According to research, the country with the most tattooed population is the United Kingdom, and the tradition goes back many years. Even Winston Churchill, Prime Minister during World War II, had an anchor tattoo on his arm. A bracelet more than 40,000 years old was found in the Siberian region. It was made by an extinct human species called the Denisovans. Modern humans did not manage to make such complex jewelry until 10,000 years ago. The first prototype of the Atari console was built in 3 months, and the parts cost less than $500. Out of all countries, the most visited by tourists is France, with 86 million visitors per year. In second place is the United States, then China, and then Italy. Have you noticed that some shopping malls are confusing and easy to get lost in? In reality, most are designed this way on purpose, so people wander around and forget what they originally came for. This style is called the Gruen transfer, and it has been proven to increase sales. The Lord of the Rings trilogy was nominated for 800 awards and won 475 of them, making it the most awarded film series in history. When a piece of bread with butter or jam falls to the ground, it seems like it always falls face down, making a mess. But this is not because one side is heavier. In fact, if it fell from a table that was 9.8 feet high, the jam side would fall facing upward. Umpires in the United States Baseball League must wear black underwear. This rule exists so that, in case their pants rip, people cannot see too much. At the beginning of the 20th century, a group of scientists started a private food tasting club, but they only consumed toxic food and documented the effects it caused. With this, they managed to pressure the United States Congress to approve food regulation laws. One of the rules that almost nobody knows about soccer states that when a goal kick is taken inside the penalty area, if the ball does not leave that area before being touched again, the kick must be retaken. On November 7, 2014, in an English league game, a goal was disallowed as a result of this rule. The 13.1-foot fiberglass replica of David Hasselhoff that was used in the first SpongeBob movie was once about to be auctioned off to the highest bidder, with a price between $20,000 and $30,000. But David reconsidered and decided to store it again. The Canary Islands, which are part of Spain, are not named after canaries. This popular pet bird is actually named after dogs. It comes from the Latin Canariae insulae, which means island of dogs. And in fact, their flag has dogs on it. The original version of Beauty and the Beast, written in 1740, was created specifically to help women accept arranged marriages. In that version, the Beast is a combination of an elephant and a fish. When Nike released the Air Jordan sneakers in 1985, the NBA banned Michael Jordan from wearing them because the colors did not match his team's uniform. So the company paid the $5,000 fine he was given in each game he wore them. In South Africa, the people responsible for conserving rhinoceroses apply a special red dye to their horns. This makes them lose their value for hunters. The first time the word Google was used as a verb in popular culture, to Google, was in an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in 2002. Tectonic plates move on planet Earth at the same speed that fingernails grow, 0.04 inches per week. This movement of the plates is what causes volcanic activity. In Switzerland, there are no landfills. Half of the trash is recycled, and the other half is used to produce electricity. They use modern incineration plants that also reduce pollution and generate energy. In general, all predators have their eyes at the front of their heads, specialized for looking forward, and all prey have their eyes more toward the sides, adapted to have a wider field of vision to defend themselves. Actor Crispin Glover sued the production of the movie Back to the Future because, despite not appearing in the second movie of the trilogy, during filming they used a mold of his face and clips from the previous movie to make it look like he had been part of it. In 1970, musician Bob Dylan was already tired of being listened to only by hippies, so he intentionally made an album called Self-Portrait with a very different, more pop style so his fan base would change. He had done something similar before when he decided to use only an electric guitar. More than 60% of consumers in China are willing to pay more for a product labeled Made in the United States than for those labeled Made in China. A Korean soldier named Yang Kyung-jong was forced to fight on 3 different sides during World War II. First, he was in the Japanese army, then he was captured and enlisted into the Soviet army, and later the same thing happened with the German army, all within the span of just 5 years. The word Ouija, which gives its name to the famous game where you can communicate with ghosts and those kinds of things, is a registered trademark of Parker Brothers, the same brand that made Monopoly and that now belongs to Hasbro. Australia is the continental landmass that moves the fastest in the world. Each year, it is 2.8 inches farther north. This has even forced GPS data to be updated periodically. An average human has enough phosphorus in their body to make 2,200 matches. Most of it is found in the bones and is essential for producing cellular energy. To this day, in Vietnam, they use fuel tanks from American airplanes that were specially cut to be used as canoes. The energy drink Red Bull was created in Thailand in 1976 and was made specifically for truck drivers so they would not fall asleep on the road. The IKEA store in Australia once gave cribs to couples who proved their babies were born on November 14th, exactly 9 months after February 14th, Valentine's Day. Every minute, 250 babies are born in the world. That means that every day, we have 360,000 new humans. This equals more than 130 million births each year, approximately. Elvis Presley won only 3 Grammy Awards during his entire career, even though he had 18 #1 hits. In contrast, the artist with the most awards is Georg Scholti, the conductor of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, who has 31. 7-Up released a version of its drink called DNL, which is the 7-Up logo upside down, and it consisted of the opposite of traditional 7-Up. Instead of being clear in a green bottle, the drink was green in a clear bottle, and instead of lime-lemon, it was lemon-lime. Until recently, in the city of Paris, there was only one stop sign, and it was outside a construction site, but it disappeared in 2014. Apparently, in the capital of France, they do not like to stop. Scientists made calculations and concluded that in our galaxy, there are at least 2 billion planets similar to Earth. That means that the probability that extraterrestrials exist is very high. It is just that we have not met them yet, and probably never will because they are very far away. Liquid helium has no viscosity, which allows it to pass through microscopic holes. It can literally pass through walls like a ghost. Oxygen has no color or smell in its gaseous state, but when it is in liquid or solid form, it has a slight blue color. Liquid oxygen is one of the components of rocket fuel. Even though the Eiffel Tower is made completely of iron and looks very solid, When there are strong winds, a slight movement can be felt at the very top. This tower measures 1,049.9 feet. Cats show a level of affection and bonding with humans in the same way that dogs and babies do, even if it seems like they do not pay attention to you. In Iceland, beer was prohibited from 1915 until 1989. On March 1st of that year, the day it was legalized, it became National Beer Day, celebrated with many parties in that country. Cheetahs are the fastest land animals of all. They can reach speeds of up to 74.56 miles per hour. However, humans beat them in endurance. We can travel much longer distances without getting tired. A 42-year-old Russian fisherman named Igor Vodozhbitsin was being attacked by a bear when suddenly his phone rang, which his daughter had set to the song Baby by Justin Bieber. When it rang, the bear got scared and ran back into the forest. In Scotland, in 2017, two students entered an art gallery and saw an empty table, so they placed a pineapple there to see if people would view it as art. When they returned 4 days later, the pineapple was already covered with a protective glass case that had been placed on it. Actress Jennifer Lawrence once threatened some men with the bow and arrow she used in the Hunger Games movies after they entered her home, but she later realized they were only repair technicians. Actress Zendaya Marie Sturmer-Coleman, also known as Zendaya, who appears in the Spider-Man movies among other things, says that her name has connections to her German and African heritage, and that her first name comes from a word in the Shona language that means to give thanks. She says her parents added the letter Z and Zen because they liked it. They might as well say they invented it. 50,000 years ago, a species closely related to humans called Homo floresiensis lived on an island in Indonesia. They already knew how to use fire and advanced tools. They measured less than 3.3 feet and weighed 55.1 pounds, but they became extinct when Homo sapiens arrived to occupy the area. The franchise that has made the most money of all time, if we add movies, video games, promotional merchandise, and other entertainment pieces, is Pokémon, which has made $95 billion, surpassing others that have existed much longer, such as Star Wars or Mickey Mouse. When Led Zeppelin achieved worldwide fame, music critics claimed people only bought their records because they said Led Zeppelin on the cover. In response, their next album had no words at all, only an image of a man carrying branches, and it still sold 37 million copies. NASA tried to repair the Hubble telescope the same way we all fix problems with our phones or computers, by turning it off and turning it back on. Every year, the Netherlands sends Canada 20,000 tulips as a form of gratitude for the help they provided during World War II. Birds are not affected at all by capsaicin, which is the compound that makes chili peppers spicy. That is why birds can eat chili peppers and it does not affect them at all. For them, it is like any other fruit. Birds help spread chili pepper plants. The first inhabitants of the island of Madagascar were not African people, despite its proximity. They were actually people from Indonesia who arrived in canoes after traveling nearly 3,107 miles. The European Union has legislation that encourages scientists to ensure that artificial intelligence systems in the future respect human rights. And there is also a section in that same document that says these new artificial life forms will have a kind of fundamental rights that protect them. The first message ever sent over the internet was in 1969, and it consisted of the letters LO. They were supposed to send the word login, but the computer crashed after the first two letters. At that time, the internet was nothing like we know it today, but the foundations were already being created. In California, United States, to fight forest fires, they use convicts who often accept the job because the pay is better than the normal jobs they are given in prison. In addition, doing that reduces their sentence. To demonstrate how committed he was to his role as Walter White in the series Breaking Bad, actor Bryan Cranston learned how to cook the same thing his character cooked, his famous blue crystals. It is impossible to make gelatin with fresh pineapple, since the enzyme bromelain in this fruit can digest the gelatin before it sets. This does not happen with canned or cooked pineapple, since heat neutralizes this enzyme. In South Korea, airplanes are prohibited from taking off and landing during the annual university entrance exams to ensure there are no distractions. It is a very important date for students. Even though Germany is famous for its variety of sausages and cold cuts, almost 10% of the country's population is actually vegan. It is one of the countries with the highest percentage of all. The first pizzeria to open in the American continent was Lombardi's Pizza in 1905. It still exists and is located in New York. Cheetahs are considered small cats because they do not have the ability to roar like lions. Instead of roaring, they make sounds like meows, chirps, and purrs to communicate. The famous bird from the Twitter logo has a name. It is called Larry. It was named after National Basketball Association player Larry Bird, since his last name means bird. He played for the Boston Celtics, the team from the hometown of social network co-founder Biz Stone. Until the early 19th century, Australia was called New Holland, but it was changed to Terra Australis and finally to a shortened form of that, Australia. When the largest diamond in the world was transported from Africa to the United Kingdom, the transport involving sea and land travel was widely reported in the media. However, this was a distraction, since the real diamond was simply sent by regular mail. According to a study, 84% of people who decide to become vegetarian or vegan eventually return to eating meat. Bill Clinton met United States President John F. Kennedy when he was a teenager in 1963 during a school visit to the White House. This inspired him to pursue a career in politics, and 30 years later, he also became president. African bees are actually hybrids that accidentally escaped from a laboratory and have spread ever since. They were created in Brazil in the 1950s by crossing African and European bees to improve honey production. The immense popularity of Dragon Ball in Mexico once caused a diplomatic issue between Mexico and Japan when public viewing events were held with giant screens showing the latest episodes of Dragon Ball Super with government support. Japan had to send a formal letter requesting that the episodes not be shown, but they were shown anyway. If all the points Wayne Gretzky scored during his hockey career were removed, he would still be the all-time points leader if only his assists were counted. He is the greatest player of all time, if you ask any ice hockey fan. Jackie Chan is known for being an actor who implements martial arts in his movies, but he is also a singer. He has released 20 albums since 1984 that have been very popular in Asia. Contrary to what people say, in Australia, people are not in that much danger from wild animals. In fact, the last time someone died from a spider bite in that country was in 1980. If you chew gum while cutting onions, you can prevent your eyes from watering, and rubbing your hands on stainless steel can help remove the smell. Platypuses, this animal that looks like a glitch in nature, lays eggs but is a mammal, which means it also produces milk. So in theory, it is the only animal that can make its own custard, except it is also venomous. I told you it was very strange. The movie Kung Fu Panda was so successful in China that it caused a national debate about why Western people managed to make a better movie about Chinese culture than the Chinese themselves. In the United States, alarm clock production did not stop in 1944, even though at that time all materials were being used for military purposes. It did not stop because workers were arriving late due to the same shortage of clocks. In Egypt, they are building a city that will become the new capital. It will have an intelligent traffic system and a park larger than Central Park in New York. It has not yet been given a name. I suggest Cairo 2 in 3 dimensions. Glitter was invented by a farmer in the United States in 1934 who was exploring ways to dispose of leftover plastic by shredding it. Scientists calculated that the chemical elements that make up a human body would cost around $160. That means we are worth less than a PlayStation 5. White dwarf stars can burn out, but because that happens over an enormous amount of time, between 10 and 100 billion years, it is believed that none have reached that point yet. It has been demonstrated that creating any type of art helps reduce stress hormones in people, regardless of skill level. So if you want to reduce stress, start painting or making a sculpture or something like that. The city that holds the record for being destroyed the most times in movies is New York City. This is because it is one of the most recognizable cities in the world, and its iconic skyline makes it the ideal setting for disaster and action scenes. The famous McDonald's McRib sandwich, which is sometimes sold for a limited time, contains 70 different ingredients, 34 of them in the bun, including a compound called azodicarbonamide that is used in the manufacture of yoga mats. The scene in the movie La La Land where the character played by Emma Stone is auditioning with great emotion but is abruptly interrupted because one of the casting people has to answer a call is actually a representation of something that happened in real life to actor Ryan Gosling, who also stars in the movie. The only reason King Tutankhamun of Egypt is so well known today is because, as a relatively unimportant pharaoh, his tomb was not looted by thieves. Everything remained intact until it was discovered by archaeologists. 22/7 is more accurate for representing the value of pi than the commonly used 3.14 with only two decimal places. Margaret Abbott, a woman who won a golf tournament in Paris, received only a porcelain bowl as a prize. Much later, it was discovered that this event had been part of the 1900 Olympic Games, which clearly had not been very well organized. She never knew she was supposed to have won a gold medal. United States soldiers in Iraq had trouble detecting traps that activate when a wire is crossed and broken, so they sent a shipment of 120,000 canned party streamers, like the ones used at celebrations. Throwing these things to detect traps is the fastest solution they found to that problem. Alfred Nobel invented dynamite, something that later troubled him greatly. He did not want that to be his legacy, so he used his fortune to create an event that celebrated humanity. That is how the Nobel Prize was created. Concorde's supersonic airplanes flew so high that passengers received twice the radiation dose compared to a conventional flight. In 2005, Neil Armstrong, the first man to step on the moon, almost sued his barber after he sold some of his hair for $3,000. The buyer did not want to return the hair, but said he would donate another $3,000 to charity. One of Uranus's moons, called Miranda, is probably the most damaged celestial body in the solar system. Researchers have observed its strange shape and have speculated that it was caused by a large collision, or have even said that it is made of water and ice, and that part of it melted at some point. But there is still no accepted theory. When Yuri Gagarin, the first cosmonaut to reach space, landed his capsule on Earth, a woman who was passing by approached him and asked if he had come from outer space, and he replied that he had. It must have been a very strange day for both of them. The longest worm in the world is Linnaeus longissimus, and it can measure up to 180.45 feet. Most luxury brands such as Louis Vuitton and Chanel destroy their products at the end of the year to prevent them from being sold at a discount. They have even been accused of environmental damage for burning merchandise. The first worker strike that there are records of happened at a pyramid in Egypt. It happened more than 3,000 years ago when they demanded better food rations and fair working conditions. The replica of the Eiffel Tower, located at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas, is built at a scale of 1:2, meaning half the size of the original. It was supposed to be full size, but it could not be built that way due to its proximity to the city's airport. Giraffes have the same number of neck vertebrae as humans. Both species have 7 vertebrae, but in giraffes, they are much longer. In a meeting of heads of state in 1985, United States President Ronald Reagan asked Mikhail Gorbachev, leader of the Soviet Union, if he would be willing to become allies in the case of an alien invasion. Gorbachev said that he definitely would. At that time, those two countries did not get along at all. On one occasion, actor Nicolas Cage donated the amount of $2 million to Amnesty International for psychological treatments and the reintegration of children who were forced at some point to participate in armed conflicts around the world. Planet Earth becomes heavier every day. Its mass increases by 110.2 short tons daily due to space dust and meteorites that fall onto it. Halocephalobus mephisto is a species of nematode discovered in 2011. Which would be a normal animal if it were not the species found living at the greatest depth. It was discovered in water-filled cracks in gold mines in South Africa at depths of up to 5,249.34 feet below Earth's surface. It was nicknamed the devil worm. I do not think any other nickname would have suited it better. Mike Tyson was arrested 38 times before turning 14 years old. When he was sent to a correctional facility, he realized he was good at boxing. So he began training with a former professional. That is how his successful career began. There is a toilet-themed restaurant in Taiwan where the food is served to you in small toilets, but you cannot use the bathroom in the dishes, only use them to eat. The city of Kamikatsu in Japan aims to recycle 100% of its waste. They have 34 recycling categories and currently recycle 80% of everything they produce. On average, the thickness of Antarctic ice is 3,280.84 feet. That means you would have to go through 3,280.84 feet of ice before reaching the ground beneath it. Stephen Hawking was once asked if he knew his intelligence quotient, and he replied that he had no idea, but that people who brag about their intelligence quotient are losers. A man from Oregon, United States, was jailed and fined $1,500 because he collected rainwater, and in that place, it is considered state property. This is due to old laws that regulate the use and storage of water resources. In the video game NBA Jam, the Detroit Pistons team was practically unbeatable when the player used the Chicago Bulls. This was not a game error. It was because the lead programmer, Mark Turmel, was a Pistons fan. When the PlayStation 4 consoles were released, they had a retail price of $399, but according to a component analysis, it cost Sony $381 to manufacture each one. They barely made profit from console sales. In 1963, the creator of Heineken beer, Alfred Heineken, designed a bottle that could also be used as a brick to build houses. However, the project was not very popular, and currently, only this brand's museum has a wall made from these bricks. Many consumer products are decreasing in size. Chocolate bars, candy, and cereal are examples of products that have reduced their weight by small percentages. Brands had previously mentioned that it was because of rising raw material prices, but when prices stabilized, they kept doing it. In reality, it is a tactic to generate more profit. According to studies, 4 families in Iceland possess genes that are only found in Native Americans. This suggests that Vikings likely brought a woman from America to that country about 1,000 years ago. When helium is cooled to extreme temperatures, almost near absolute zero, it becomes a superfluid. That means it can flow without friction, it can climb the walls of containers, and it can even leak through spaces only a few molecules wide. The first official Marvel movie ever made was Howard the Duck in 1986. Before that, a Captain America movie was made in 1944, but at that time Marvel did not exist under that name. The circle closed when, in Avengers Endgame, Howard the Duck can be seen in the final battle for a few seconds. In reality, ancient ninjas in Japan did not dress the way we normally know them, all in black and with their faces covered. In fact, they dressed depending on the occasion. The important thing was that they blended in with the environment to go unnoticed. Ninja reflexes. During his trip to the Galapagos Islands in 1835, Charles Darwin took a 5-year-old tortoise that they named Harriet. This tortoise lived 176 years until 2006 and spent its final years in Australia with a family team of Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter. Scientists at Binghamton University are developing concrete that heals itself. It achieves this with a type of fungus that activates when there is a crack and generates calcium carbonate that solidifies. Once, eccentric film director Alfred Hitchcock offered his guests a dinner where all the food was painted blue, from the soup to the dessert, simply because he liked the color blue and wanted to see people's reactions. According to the movie Finding Nemo, the Great Barrier Reef looks like this with many colors. However, due to climate change, more than half of this place actually looks completely white and without life, and it is believed that by the year 2100, nothing will remain of this landscape. According to a study conducted in 2018, the most famous and charismatic animals, such as lions, elephants, and giraffes, are at greater risk of extinction because they are heavily used in advertising and documentaries. This creates the false perception that they are not threatened and do not need conservation. Peter Mayhew played Chewbacca in all the Star Wars movies except the 2 most recent ones. Even so, he appears in the credits as a Chewbacca consultant. Most cats do not like drinking water from a container that is close to their food. It is a good idea to keep them separate, or they can become dehydrated. Mark Hamill, the actor who plays Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, was 64 years old when he began filming the movies of the new trilogy of the franchise in 2015. 1 year older than Alec Guinness was in the original 1977 movie when he played Obi-Wan Kenobi. Very similar roles. The first name ever written that can still be read today is Kushim, found on a tablet with symbols made more than 5,000 years ago in the region where Mesopotamia was located. Changing the oil in a Bugatti Veyron takes 27 hours and also costs $21,000. This happens because it requires disassembling many parts and using special high-performance oil. Prisoners at the Santa Rita do Sapucaí prison in Brazil can pedal exercise bicycles to generate electricity that goes to the public lighting of a nearby city. For every 16 hours they do this, 1 day is deducted from their sentence. When the Paris Agreement against climate change was signed at the United Nations, it was the time when the most different countries gathered to sign something in a single day. There were 174 world leaders representing their countries who met to sign. There is a sequel to the book Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, called Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, which includes space travel and aliens in the plot. The inventor of the Ethernet protocol, Robert Metcalfe, said in December 1995 that the internet was going to grow immensely fast, but that it would collapse and disappear in 1996, and that if he was wrong, he would eat his words. Later on, he had to blend a page from the magazine where this was published and drink it. He literally ate his words. Shopping malls are not something new. In fact, they existed in the Roman Empire. Trajan's Market was a shopping center with more than 150 spaces across 4 floors, with many stores and even a food area. The only thing it was missing was a Starbucks. The famous boxer and grill salesman George Foreman gave the same name to his 5 sons. They are all named George Foreman, just like him, so they would always have something in common. Each year, in the Lost and Found department at Disney World, around 6,000 phones, 3,500 cameras, and more than 18,000 hats and caps are recovered. Mount Everest gives the impression of being a place that few humans have accessed, but in reality, every day lines of climbers can be seen scaling it, along with tons of trash left there, even in places near the summit. The caffeine in the coffee plant developed as a way to repel predators after thousands of years of natural selection, in the same way capsaicin, the substance that makes chili peppers spicy, developed. Yet, humans still consume them. Japanese students have a tradition of carrying Kit Kat chocolates when they take an exam because it is pronounced kitokatsu, which in Japanese means guaranteed victory. Even though in many photos the surface of the planet Mars appears very red, the color of these images is altered because of the lens, since in reality, Martian dust is almost the same color as dust found in many deserts here on Earth. In the 4,600,000,000 years that the Sun has existed, it has orbited the center of the Milky Way 20 times. You could say it is a 20-year-old in galactic years. If a person does not try a new food dish before the age of 35, there is a 95% probability that they will never try it. This is because as people age, they are less likely to try new things. Black tomatoes are a special variety that can be cultivated without genetic modification. In addition, they have many antioxidants that help with different health conditions. In the 60s, someone tried to create a machine to help in the birth of babies, in which the mother spun around, causing the baby to come out thanks to centrifugal force. Obviously, it was something that was not successful. It is estimated that there are $1.8 quadrillion in physical cash circulating on planet Earth, and the amount that exists only digitally is much larger than that. There is a boat that has been stuck in the rapids above Niagara Falls for more than 100 years. Nobody has tried to recover it. Retired professor Joan Ginther, who has a master's degree in statistics from Stanford University, has won the lottery 4 times for a total of $20.4 million. The probability of achieving what she did is 1 in 18 septillion. A man named Jadav Payeng planted an entire forest by himself with thousands of trees to save Majuli Island in northern India and prevent it from being consumed by erosion. Today, this forest is full of wild animals. Passenger pigeons were once the most abundant birds in the world. Their flocks were so large and numerous that they could darken the sky wherever they passed. However, due to hunting, the species became extinct in 1914. In 2009, Burger King launched a campaign where if you deleted 10 of your Facebook friends, the restaurant would give you a hamburger. Those friends would be notified that their friendship was worth less than a hamburger. Around 2% of people have a condition called aphantasia, which means they cannot visualize images in their minds. Even if they imagine things using other senses, they cannot imagine visual images. When director Paul Verhoeven first received the script that would become the movie RoboCop, he read very little of it and threw it in the trash. His wife rescued it and read it properly. Afterward, she convinced Verhoeven to make the movie, which would become one of the most successful of the 1980s. Before humans discovered how to smelt and work iron ore, some weapons made from iron already existed. This iron came from meteorites, also known as siderites. Cold water heats faster than hot water. Scientists discovered this, which is due to the molecules already being predisposed to change. They called it the reverse Mpemba effect. The founders of Mensa, which is the famous club of intelligent people, did it with an intellectual aristocracy in mind, according to them, and they were very disappointed when they found out that over time, most of their members came from humble backgrounds. Cats have 32 muscles that control their ears to move them, while humans only have 6, and most of us cannot move our ears. Actor Terry Crews, known for deodorant commercials and television series and movies, has a strong passion for drawing. In fact, one of his first jobs consisted of making drawings in court. Since photographs are not allowed during trials, there must always be a court artist or painter. At the end of the 19th century, it is estimated that there were more than 100,000 cheetahs in the wild on planet Earth. Currently, there are only around 7,000 left. We have destroyed their habitat. Human life expectancy has increased more in the past 50 years than in the previous 200,000 years. It is believed that the more sarcastic a person is, the more creative they are. But that does not mean you should go through life trying to be more sarcastic. Around 70% of all spices produced in the world come from India, which exports them but is also one of the countries that uses the most seasonings in its food. The Haya tribe of Tanzania has a tradition of forging steel that is more than 2,000 years old. Research that was conducted found ancient furnaces that, after carbon testing, confirmed they are hundreds of years old. Dark roasted coffee, despite appearing stronger, actually contains less caffeine than lighter roasted versions. The pyramids of Egypt used to be white like snow, but over time, the outer covering fell off, and now they look yellow. In the novel Forrest Gump, which the movie was based on, Forrest also joins NASA and goes into space. But when he returns, he lands on a deserted island full of cannibals and survives by defeating the tribe leader in a daily chess duel. This was already too much to include in the movie. In India lives the largest family of all. One man with 39 wives and 94 children. And his children have grandchildren and so on. In total, there are 180 people. This family has an entry in the Guinness World Records. The creator of Mario Bros., Shigeru Miyamoto, is forbidden by Nintendo from riding a bicycle to work because his safety is too important to the company. They do not even allow him to ride with a helmet, elbow pads, and knee pads. To put the small M on M&Ms, an offset printer is used to paint them. Around 2.5 million units of these candies are printed with the M every hour. Each year, 20 billion Lego pieces are manufactured worldwide. Their manufacturing process is so effective and precise that out of every million pieces produced, only 18 are defective, and a computer filters them out so they do not reach the sets. In 1992, a team of video game developers used a white ball as a test graphic for a video game while they figured out what the protagonist would look like. But they grew fond of it and decided to keep it instead of making a real character. That is how Kirby was born, a character that still exists today in Nintendo games. In Avengers Endgame, Thor was supposed to return to his muscular look halfway through the movie. However, actor Chris Hemsworth enjoyed playing that version of the character so much that he suggested Thor remain that way for the entire film. Broccoli is classified as a vegetable, but at the same time as a flower. I classify it as a no thank you. Just kidding. Eat broccoli because it is very nutritious. For the most prestigious tennis tournaments, the balls are stored in special refrigerators that keep them at a temperature of 68 degrees Fahrenheit, because variations can affect how they bounce. There is evidence that gladiators in the Roman Empire promoted products from their sponsors, just like athletes do today. There are more people using Facebook today than the total number of people who existed on the planet 200 years ago. Veterans Stadium, where the Philadelphia Eagles football team previously played, had a court and a jail specifically for fans who attended the games, who had a reputation for being very rowdy. The famous slinkies were originally invented to stabilize equipment on ships, and they did not work for that purpose. But the engineer who made them noticed their funny movement and decided to sell them as toys instead. Soccer player Cristiano Ronaldo paid for the education of a 7-year-old boy who was found after the tsunami in Indonesia wandering alone wearing a Portugal national team shirt. Years later, that boy became a player for Sporting Lisbon. The author of the Harry Potter books, J.K. Rowling, has more money than the Queen of England. While the Queen has $520 million, Rowling has more than $1 billion. Each person is only 0.1% genetically different from others, while all of us are 1.2% genetically different from our closest evolutionary relatives, chimpanzees. Bottled juice goes through a process that removes all its flavor so it can be stored longer. When it is about to be bottled for sale, flavor packs are added so it tastes normal again. It is definitely better to squeeze oranges fresh. An episode of Peppa Pig had to be banned in Australia because it showed Peppa being friendly with spiders, which was considered dangerous since spiders in Australia can be very venomous. The city of Rome is closer to the North Pole than the city of New York. This is because Rome is located at a more northern latitude. Only 15% of all plant species are on land. The rest are aquatic. The first vacuum cleaner that was invented was almost the size of a car, and its service could be requested at your home. When they arrived, they stayed outside your house, and cleaning was done with special hoses that entered through the windows or door. Horses are more closely related to rhinoceroses than to deer. They come from more closely related evolutionary branches. Also, horses cannot see directly in front of themselves when trying to look at objects very close. When celebrity reveals are done on the show The Masked Singer in its different versions and editions, most of the audience is asked to leave the set. This is done to prevent spoilers from being posted online. For the movie Speed, starring Keanu Reeves, director Joss Whedon was called 1 week before filming began as a replacement for the previous director and had to rewrite 99% of all the dialogue. When United Kingdom Prime Minister Winston Churchill visited the United States during alcohol prohibition, his doctor wrote him a prescription stating that he required indefinite quantities of alcoholic beverages. The record for the longest jump by a human is 29.2 feet, achieved at the 1968 Olympic Games, while the longest jump by a horse is 27.6 feet, which is 1.6 feet less. Long before becoming a fashion icon, high heels were used by Persian warriors because they gave them stability when using a bow and arrow. Since there is no atmosphere and therefore no wind on the moon, it is believed that the footprints left by astronauts during the Apollo missions could remain intact for up to 100 million years. There is a job that consists of rotating champagne bottles to prevent sedimentation during the aging process. People who do this job are already being replaced by machines, but those who still do it rotate about 40,000 bottles each day. In 2017, McDonald's attempted to create bubblegum-flavored broccoli in one of its many efforts to make healthier food for children. But in early tests, it was not well received. The flavor confused people. Firefighters use special chemicals to make water wetter. Although it may sound strange, this helps water spread more easily over objects and extinguish fires faster. Isaac Newton used to be a waiter at the University of Cambridge dining hall until he received a scholarship. The food with the highest caloric value is animal fat, which contains nearly 900 calories per 3.5 ounces. Children in the United States with parents from Samoa are 56 times more likely to be selected for the NFL than any other child. The term hipster, which was recently used to describe someone who has or tries to have a lot of style and bohemian culture, actually originated in the 1930s and was originally used to refer to someone in the jazz scene. In a study conducted on couples who had been married for 39 years on average, it was discovered that the wife's happiness is more important than the husband's if they want to have a happy and lasting marriage. Of all the fruits in the bromeliad plant family, pineapples are the only edible and widely popular ones. This family includes thousands of species, but the pineapple is the only one cultivated on a large scale for food and consumed worldwide for its sweet taste and nutritional value. When you are stressed, your brain literally heats up. To cool it down, it is enough to smile for a moment or relax. This happens because stress increases brain activity and blood flow, while relaxation helps reduce tension and restore balance. Nintendo popularized the term video game console so that people would stop calling competing systems Nintendos and prevent the name from becoming generic. In the ancient Persian Empire, it was a custom to debate important ideas twice, once sober and once after drinking. It was believed that if the ideas sounded good both ways, then they were considered good. The company American Express spent more than 100 years as a package delivery company before becoming the credit card company. Albert Einstein used to charge $1 for each autograph he signed. He used this money to donate to charity. Campaigns organized by basketball player Yao Ming's foundation have helped reduce shark fin soup consumption in China by nearly 50%, protecting the species. There is a Mickey Mouse gas mask, and Walt Disney himself participated in its design. Some of these still exist, and most are displayed in museums. In 1967, the members of the Beatles were seriously considering buying an island near the coast of Athens, Greece. They wanted to turn it into a utopian society, but later they forgot and did not buy it. The first submarine was made in the 1620s. It was called the Dreadnought 1 and was simply like a boat with a roof propelled by oars. It should not even be called a submarine, but technically it is. After the movie Snakes on a Plane was filmed, actor Samuel L. Jackson learned that they wanted to change the title, so he immediately forbade it, arguing that the ridiculous name was the only reason he agreed to be in the film. It is now considered a cult classic. Sometimes rabbits sleep with their eyes open. You can tell because their noses do not move. This is a defense mechanism that allows them to quickly detect predators, since they are prey animals in nature. In Mexico, it is legal to escape from prison because it is considered a human instinct to seek freedom. However, those who escape almost always break other laws in the process. Researchers identified a beneficial bacterium that people have that helps prevent food allergies in young children. The use of antibiotics causes that bacterium to decrease, making them more susceptible to allergies later in life. Out of the 206 bones in the human body, 52 are in the feet, 26 in each foot. Croissants were invented in Austria and are believed to represent the moon on the flags of Turkey and the Ottoman Empire. Uganda is the country with the greatest ethnic diversity in the world, and the next 20 most diverse countries are all in Africa. Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone, was very bad at math and said it was boring and that studying it made no sense. If you took all the molecules in a spoonful of water and aligned them in a straight line, something that is only theoretically possible, that line would measure more than 29.8 billion miles. Ancient Greek cities rewarded Olympic athletes who won by demolishing part of the walls that protected the city, so the athletes would not have to go around and pass through the gate like a normal person would. In theory, humans could survive on a diet consisting only of potatoes and butter, but obviously this is not recommended at all. The Toy Story character Woody has a last name that most people do not know. His full name is Woody Pride. Pride means pride. In Suriname, there is a day when all owners of exotic birds gather in downtown Paramaribo, the main city, to hold a singing contest for these animals. Up to 170,000 pencils can be made from the wood of an average-sized tree. Despite the title, almost all the dinosaurs that appear in the movie Jurassic Park lived in the Cretaceous period and not in the Jurassic period. Actor Tom Cruise trained with a professional diver for weeks to learn how to hold his breath for 6.5 minutes to film an underwater scene in the movie Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation. In contrast, in Aquaman, no scenes were actually filmed underwater. Everything was done with digital effects. Almost 70% of United States citizens have never left their country. Americans think that since the United States is so vast and has so much variety, they do not need to go anywhere else in their lifetime. Actress Gwyneth Paltrow has said many times that she hates the movie Shallow Hal from 2001, especially the scenes where she wore a suit to simulate obesity. She says that the first time she tried on the costume, nobody looked her in the eyes. Mickey Mouse's original name was Mortimer Mouse. It almost stayed that way, but Walt Disney's wife convinced him to finally name him Mickey. When Mexican shamans began using Coca-Cola in spiritual cleansing rituals, Pepsi discovered this and began paying them for exclusivity. Groups eventually formed depending on which drink they used. Netflix is 22 years old. It has existed since before Google, although at first it was a different service. They mailed DVDs. Before Peter Pan and Wendy became a successful stage play and book series, the name Wendy was considered a male name. Later, it became a popular name for girls. There is a way to obtain caviar without the need to kill fish. You only need to massage them until they release the caviar. If this method is done on a large scale, caviar could cost up to 70% less. There are stars so far away that we cannot see their light because the universe has not existed long enough for that light to reach us. If the optimal temperature and pressure conditions are present, water can exist in liquid, solid, and gaseous states at the same time in a container. This is called the triple point. In January 2013, Zimbabwe's Ministry of Finance announced that the country only had $217 in its bank account. Bees can generate electricity because they flap their wings extremely fast. That is how they know if a flower has recently been visited by another bee, since it will have a higher electrical charge. A man named Jonathan Lee Riches holds the Guinness World Record for being the person who has filed the most lawsuits, with a total of 2,600. Retired workers from distilleries in Dublin, Ireland, in addition to their normal pension, also received one bottle of whiskey each month. Unfortunately, this practice is no longer carried out. Alcohol-based hand sanitizer was invented by a nursing student named Lupe Hernandez in 1966. She concluded that if alcohol were presented as a gel, people could clean their hands more easily in places where water and soap were unavailable. Throughout your life, you will walk the equivalent of circling the world 5 times. The circumference of Earth at the equator is around 24,855 miles. Henry Heinz chose to put his famous ketchup in completely transparent glass bottles that, at that time, were uncommon. Because there were few cleanliness standards in food, other companies used colored bottles so people would not see the trash and strange things inside their products. The music heard during the slow-motion scene in the movie Dread from 2012 is based on a Justin Bieber song, but played 800% slower. A study from the University of Cambridge states that humans evolved together with plants and fungi. It is estimated that at least 1% of our DNA was acquired from plants and fungi. The closest relatives of whales in the evolutionary tree are hippopotamuses, which come from a species of land mammal called Pakicetus that lived near the coasts of Pakistan 50 million years ago. When an eruption occurred at the Toba supervolcano in what is now Indonesia 75,000 years ago, the effect of the ash that spread through the sky across almost the entire world caused a temperature change on the planet that nearly drove humans to extinction. According to research, DNA has a cycle where, after many years, it can no longer be recovered, and scientists concluded that the oldest organism we could clone would not exceed 2 million years in age. The last dinosaurs lived 65 million years ago, so it is better to forget about Jurassic Park becoming real. It is impossible to know what the universe really looks like because 96% of it is made of dark matter and dark energy, which are undetectable to humans. The particles of these substances do not interact with regular matter or light. Either way, we are missing out on it. In the 1960s, Alcatraz prison was known for offering hot showers to prisoners. This was done because, according to security, it would make them accustomed to hot water so they could not escape, since the prison was built on an island and the surrounding water was very cold. Astronauts sometimes observe rays or flashes of light, even when their eyes are closed. This phenomenon is believed to be generated by cosmic rays that pass through their eyes, strong enough to activate their optic nerves. In the city of Dubai, a coral reef was successfully relocated for the first time to save it from nearby land development. The project cost nearly $10 million, but was completely successful. The original story of Mulan has been told in China for more than 1,400 years before Disney decided to make an animated movie and later a live-action film. Despite all that, there is no proof that it was a real historical event. The uncontrollable laughter we experience when we are tickled is actually a defense mechanism of the body that activates automatically in response to anxiety and panic. Green tea, black tea, and oolong tea come from exactly the same plant. The only difference is that in each tea, the level of oxidation of the leaves is different. Some hotels use RFID chips to track towels. The amount of money they save by preventing people from taking them home can reach thousands of dollars. If all the tweets posted each day were written down, they would fill a book of 10 million pages. Out of all that information, probably only 1% is worth it. Would you dare to read that book? In the 1912 Olympic Games, the Japanese marathon runner Shiso Kanekuri quit and went home without telling anyone. After this, he was considered a missing person in Sweden for years, until in 1966, he was invited to finish his race, which he completed with a time of 54 years, 8 months, and 5 hours. It is the longest time anyone has ever taken to finish a marathon. When scenes on the moon of Endor in Star Wars were being filmed, in a forest in the United States, actor Peter Mayhew, who played Chewbacca, had to be accompanied by crew members wearing fluorescent-colored vests so that he would not be mistaken for Bigfoot in real life and get shot. In China, paper airplanes were already being made more than 2,000 years ago. Of course, at that time they were not called that. They were known as origami birds, and people had fun throwing them. The Beijing Olympic Games in 2008 began exactly at 8:08 and 8 seconds on the 8th day of the 8th month of the year 2008. This was done because of the ancient belief in that country that the number 8 brings good luck. Flies are very good at dodging things while flying, and it is difficult to catch them. That is because their brains update information from their eyes faster, as if they had more frames per second and observed the world almost in slow motion. According to Facebook statistics, the most common day when breakups happen is Monday. And it makes sense because we all hate Mondays. Athletes from Kuwait are not allowed to compete under their country's flag in the Olympic Games due to government laws that allow interference in sports organization elections. Athletes compete under the Olympic flag instead. NASA observed in astronauts who spent more than 6 months in space a condition that caused changes in their vision, caused by pressure variation that literally changed the shape of their eye. Biologists still have not been able to confirm how eels reproduce. The birth of one has not been observed so far. The company MasterCard is going to ban automatic charges after a trial period for a product, something that happens with many services. Now, customer confirmation will be required. Jupiter is the fourth brightest celestial body that can be seen from Earth. Only the Sun, the Moon, and Venus are brighter. It is one of the 5 planets that can be seen without using a telescope. The food that is most likely to be stolen around the world, according to statistics, is cheese. This happens because of its high value, easy resale, and high demand in supermarkets and markets. The Ford Model T automobile, which sold more than 16 million units, was produced in its early years in different colors. But to increase production speed, starting in 1914, they only made them in black. It was years later that colors returned. This was done because black paint dried faster. In 2008, a beach was stolen in Jamaica. Yes, you heard that right. The equivalent of 500 truckloads full of sand disappeared from that place, and to this day, they have not been found. Despite the increase in computer processing speed, each Shrek movie took twice as long to process or render the final version. The company DreamWorks called this Shrek's Law. The company Ocean Spray, famous for its cranberry products, is a cooperative made up of 700 owners who have cranberry fields. If you have a grandfather or grandmother from Ireland, you are eligible to obtain citizenship of that country. You do not even have to have visited or know anything about the place. You only need to pay a standard fee. Actor Jim Carrey attended the 1999 MTV Awards dressed as a hippie with long hair and a beard, and did not tell anyone. In fact, Samuel L. Jackson spoke with him for 15 minutes without knowing who he really was. In medieval times, the city of Bologna and the city of Modena, both in Italy, had a great war, and it all started because of some people who stole a bucket. Yes, just like you hear it. Currently, the famous bucket is displayed in the city of Modena. An error on the Costa Rica border in Google Maps caused a brief invasion by the Army of Nicaragua. After this incident, Google added to its terms that data from its map service should not be used as a reference to decide military actions between nations. In 2004, the Republic of Georgia fired 30,000 police officers to fight corruption. After that, they changed the police stations and covered them with glass to give a literal image of transparency. Over the years, it has been seen that it was a very effective method. In 1911, inventor Thomas Edison declared that gold had limited time left, that it would become so common it would cost the same as iron or steel bars. But as we know, he was wrong. The only countries where the metric system is not used as the official unit of measurement are Liberia, Myanmar, and the United States. However, in the United States, the metric system is used in science, medicine, the military, and technology. Actress Kate Winslet declared that it has happened many times that a fan approaches her to sign an image of the famous Titanic scene where Jack draws her like one of his French girls. But she says she never signs that image because it makes her very uncomfortable. If you receive many spam or unsolicited service calls on your phone, the best way to avoid them is to answer and mute the microphone. That way, the system will identify your number as inactive, and you will receive fewer of these annoying calls. There is a website where you can only listen to Spotify songs that nobody else has ever listened to before. It is called Forgotify. The Emperor of Japan, Akihito, is such an expert on goby fish that he has written 38 scientific studies about that species. There are so many castles in France that some end up being sold for less than a 2-bedroom apartment in cities like New York or Sydney. In the intro of The Simpsons, when the family goes to sit on the couch, although it is different each time, In the original, where they just go to sit, and also in many more versions, Maggie, the baby, arrives walking to the couch. I do not know if you had noticed, even though she clearly never walks in the series. More than 700 grapes are used to make a bottle of wine, although it can vary depending on the brand and type. Pancho Villa, one of the key generals in the Mexican Revolution, despite always being described as a rebel, actually never drank alcohol and was so concerned about people drinking it that he banned it in the state of Chihuahua. In the weeks following the release of the Netflix series The Queen's Gambit, sales of chess sets and accessories such as timers increased 178% compared to the previous year, and sales of chess books increased 600%. Bedbugs have existed since dinosaurs ruled the Earth, at least 65 million years ago. They have survived multiple mass extinctions by adapting to different hosts, including birds, bats, and eventually humans. Barrel-eye fish can see through their heads due to their transparency. They can rotate their eyes and look backward. When musician Post Malone was asked about the meaning of his face tattoo that says, "always tired," he answered that it was simply for aesthetic reasons and to find a phrase that had the same number of letters in each word, something he apparently did not achieve. He also said it relates to his work ethic. He is always tired because he is always working. Japanese people have mascots for everything. For example, in the city of Yubari, the official mascot is this bear with a watermelon head that does not look very friendly. This city is famous for its bears and its watermelons, so it was natural to create something like that. Actress Carmen Electra is actually named Tara Patrick. She decided to use that stage name in 1991 because the famous singer Prince came up with it one day, and although she was not very convinced at first, it became the name everyone knew her by. In the United Arab Emirates, they are considering building a mountain. This is intended to help create rain and make the country's climate less desert-like. Beekeepers are forbidden from eating bananas because the smell of this fruit makes bees aggressive. A day on Venus lasts longer than a year on Venus. It sounds strange, but it is true. Its rotation movement is extremely slow. Until 1999, the official mode of maritime communication worldwide was Morse code through telegraph. Now, high-frequency radios and satellite communication are used. There is a disease called mosaic virus that causes watermelons to develop circular patterns that look like someone created artwork on them. In developing countries, it has been shown that to keep elephant populations separated so they do not fight, regular fences do not work. Improvised posts with beehives are used instead, taking advantage of elephants' natural fear of bees. The Fisk reading machine was the first attempt to create an electronic book, except that 100 years ago, this device used a magnifying lens, and the books came on cards with very small letters, which made it possible to fit very long books onto just a few sheets. But this device did not have the expected success. If you could somehow gather all 7,500,000,000 people in the world and put them together as if they were at a concert, we would all fit in an area similar to the city of Los Angeles. The famous Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy began construction in the year 1173, and due to the soft ground it was built on, it began sinking when only the third floor was being constructed. Even so, they finished it. In addition to leaning, it was also sinking. But a few years ago, work was done to reinforce its foundations. They did not straighten it completely because it would lose its tourist attraction. Eminem suspected that Kendrick Lamar had someone helping him write his songs, so he invited him to his house and made him write a verse alone in a room. After hearing what he wrote, he admitted that he was the best rapper he had ever met. Even though natural gas began to be commonly used about 200 years ago, during the times of the Han Dynasty in China, they already had an extraction and transportation system to use it in stoves more than 2,000 years ago. When the first printing press to make books as we know them today was invented, the Roman Empire still existed. This was in the 1440s. The fall of Constantinople, which is considered the fall of what remained of the Roman Empire, happened in 1453. Lyrebirds, native to Australia, are so skilled at imitating sounds that they have been heard perfectly imitating other animals. But not only that, they also imitate sounds such as car horns, hammers, and chainsaws. In the Kingdom of Bhutan, there is only one international airport, and it is in such a difficult location, between mountains and at high altitude, that only a few pilots are allowed to fly there. It is one of the most skill-demanding airports for pilots. The first prototype of the Xbox console, which was presented by Bill Gates in the year 2000, was literally a giant metal X that contained the components. Shortly after, that design was discarded. The movie The Wolf of Wall Street was partially financed by a money laundering fraud in the Malaysian government, money that was invested in the production company that made the film. A mail carrier from southern Lyon, France, named Ferdinand Cheval, collected rocks during 34 years of service and used them to build a castle he called the Ideal Palace of Postman Cheval. It became a local attraction. Singapore is the only country in the world that gained its independence even though they did not want to. It was on August 9, 1965, when they separated from Malaysia after some conflicts. Director Guillermo del Toro has said that he once flooded his bathroom in the same way it happens in the scene of the Oscar-winning movie The Shape of Water. Henry Ford built all his machines and cars by hand without a planned design, since he could not read blueprints well. According to a study, self-made millionaires are slightly happier overall than millionaires who inherited their wealth. Scientists managed to build a device that allows them to control a beetle as if it were a remote control car. Through electrical impulses, they send it instructions so it goes wherever they want. According to them, this does not harm the insect. A Japanese steel plant is the only one that can produce the central part of a nuclear reactor container from a single ingot weighing 661.4 short tons. This company also manufactures traditional samurai swords. Ostriches can run faster than horses. They never hide their heads in the ground, and they can make a sound similar to a lion's roar. Moral of the story? Never mess with an ostrich. A Japanese store sells pants designed by lions at the Kamin Zoo in Hitachi. These animals are allowed to play with and tear these garments so they look worn, and then they sell them, and part of the money is used for their preservation. In the world, there are more people who have a smartphone than people who have a toilet to go to the bathroom. This reflects the great inequality in access to basic sanitation, especially in rural areas and developing countries. Before the 20th century, sugar was sold as large rocks, and you needed special tools to break it into pieces or grind it. A British engineer won £1.5 million from a bet of only 2. He correctly chose 6 winners in a horse race, including one that had not won in 28 consecutive races. Even though Liam Neeson always plays strong character roles in action movies, in reality, this actor is afraid of heights. This fear goes so far that he cannot even climb onto chairs to change light bulbs. A glass of champagne contains around 1 million gas bubbles. I do not know what motivated the person who counted them, but that is how it is. And if you do not believe me, count them, and you will see that it is true. A band called Wolfpack uploaded a music album to Spotify that consisted only of silence and told their fans to repeat it every night while they slept. They earned $20,000 in royalties before Spotify realized the trick and deleted the songs. The movie Jurassic Park was originally going to use stop motion to create the dinosaurs, but when director Steven Spielberg saw what they were doing at Industrial Light and Magic, he decided to switch to digital effects. To this day, this movie is still recognized for its great effects. When the movie Tokyo Drift was filmed, many scenes were filmed without first obtaining a permit, and the studios even hired a person to go to jail instead of the director. The largest mountain that could exist on a neutron star would be only 0.2 inches tall. This is due to the extremely powerful gravity these celestial bodies have. The best-selling book of all time is the Bible. So far, it has sold 5 billion copies. This is the first selfie ever taken in history. It was taken by Robert Cornelius, a pioneer of photography in the United States in 1839. When it gets very hot during the summer, the Eiffel Tower can grow up to 5.9 inches. This happens because metal expands with high temperatures. Almost 2 billion people in the world speak English. However, it is only the native language of 350 million. Everyone else speaks it as a second language. The substance in the form of smoke or vapor that comes out of nuclear plants is not polluting, and nothing will happen to you if you are nearby. It is actually just water vapor that is used as a coolant. The official bird of the city of Redondo Beach, California, is the famous Goodyear blimp, even though it clearly is not a bird. A musician named Stephen Morris forgot his more than 300-year-old violin on a train. Fortunately, the violin, which is worth more than $250,000, was returned to him by a man who found it. There's a smart umbrella called Umbrella. that can predict when it is going to rain and sends you a notification to your phone. It can also send you a notification if you move too far away so you do not forget it somewhere. For the final battle scene in Iron Man 3, it was actress Gwyneth Paltrow's idea to appear only in a bra and yoga pants to, according to her, give more appeal to the character of Pepper Potts, who until that moment had only appeared in formal business suits. Door handles made of brass disinfect themselves every 8 hours because bacteria cannot remain in contact with this metal for long. It has an antibiotic effect. The first contact lenses were made in the year 1888. They covered the entire eye and not just the pupil, and they were also made of glass. The Guinness World Record for the longest wedding veil was set by a woman in Cyprus. When she got married, her veil measured the same as 63 soccer fields combined. There are ants that can live up to 29 years. This record belongs to some queen ants, which live much longer than common worker ants. Astronaut Harrison Schmitt, who went to the moon on the Apollo 17 mission in 1972, realized he had a severe allergy to lunar dust. The lead singer of the band U2, Paul David Hewson, better known as Bono, chose that stage name as a tribute to his hometown, Dublin, specifically to a hearing aid store called Bonavox that is located there. Director George Lucas did not want Harrison Ford to play Indiana Jones in the movies. Ford had already appeared in 2 of Lucas's films, and he did not want it to become like the way Robert De Niro always appeared in Martin Scorsese's movies. But in the end, he did appear, and Lucas said he was the perfect actor to play this character. On Saturn's moon Titan, the atmosphere is so dense and gravity is so low that humans could fly there if they attached wings to their arms and flapped them like birds. If you removed the space between every atom of all the humans in the world combined, our total volume would occupy the same space as a sugar cube. In Hawaii, there is no ancient pottery because there is no good clay throughout that territory. Athlete and rider Jason Lewis became the first person to travel around the world using only human power, using bicycles, roller skates, kayaks, and similar methods between 1994 and 2007. There are more twins than before. In 1980, according to statistics, on average, 1 out of every 50 births were twins. But in 2010, the same study was conducted again, and now it is 1 out of every 30. It is believed that this is because women now have children at older ages than before. For the James Bond movie No Time to Die, 3 different endings were filmed, and not even the main actor, Daniel Craig, knew which one would be used. A neuroscientist conducted research to find the songs that make people feel good. On the list, number 1 was Don't Stop Me Now by the band Queen. More than 10% of the electricity in the town of Albertville in France is generated from biogas produced during the manufacture of Beaufort cheese, which is very popular in that area. Flamethrowers that were popularized by the Germans in the early 20th century were actually invented by the Greeks in the year 673. Some historians claim that the discovery of agriculture was mainly motivated because humans 10,000 years ago wanted to make more alcohol. Once, Paris Hilton bought her dogs a house worth $325,000. It had 2 floors and contained designer furniture. That house cost more than the global average price of a large 2-story house with 5 bedrooms. There is a location in the Black Sea where scientists found ships up to 1,200 years old so well preserved that the engraved marks of the original builders can still be seen. The Pentagon has a ready and prepared plan in case a zombie invasion happens, but having that plan does not mean it will actually happen, right? Hawaiian Airlines allows you to bring a box of 11.02 pounds of pineapples on board for free on any flight leaving Hawaii. Who is coming with me to Hawaii for pineapples? In Madagascar, 90% of animal and plant species are endemic due to its isolated location. You can find very exotic organisms, but it also requires great effort to maintain balance in the ecosystem. To keep the story of the final season of Game of Thrones secret, the directors had to film fake scenes so curious onlookers and even the actors and extras themselves would leak them, and they even used anti-drone weapons. In Denmark, it is illegal to burn the flag of any country except Denmark's own flag. In South Korea, 2 years of military service is mandatory. Only Olympic medal winners can be exempt. There is an organization called Apple Search that is dedicated to finding and preserving different varieties of apples to ensure their survival for future generations. In the city of Utqiagvik in Alaska, half of a watermelon can cost almost $37. because transporting tropical fruits to such a remote location is extremely difficult. The animal with the best sense of smell of all, surprisingly, is the African elephant, but it makes sense with such a large trunk. There is a flower native to Mexico called chocolate cosmos that releases an aroma almost identical to chocolate. However, it is not eaten, but it is perfect for making your garden smell like a candy store. The airport where the movie The Terminal was filmed, which was built near Montreal, Canada, was a planning disaster, since the air traffic it would have was not considered and the roads that would connect it to the city were never built. It was finally demolished in 2016. An automotive safety organization pressured the creators of the first Batman television series to have the main characters wear seatbelts every time they entered the Batmobile. This was done to set a good example. Brian David Johnson worked at Intel as a futurist from 2009 to 2016. His tasks consisted of determining what living 10 to 15 years in the future would be like to help with the creation of new products. When you pour hot water into a glass, it sounds different than when you pour cold water. This difference is so noticeable that 96% of all people can guess the temperature of the water just by hearing it, according to studies that were conducted. It has been observed that orcas that spend a lot of time interacting with dolphins use more dolphin-like sounds, such as whistles and clicks, to the point that their language becomes completely mixed. When Beethoven performed his Ninth Symphony for the first time, since he could not hear the loud applause he was receiving because he was already practically deaf, one of the orchestra members went to tell him to turn around so he could see the standing ovation he was receiving. According to research conducted in 2013, Harry Potter fans tend to be more open to diversity, more tolerant, and less authoritarian. Watching fire for a period of time improved brain functions such as memory and problem-solving ability in ancient humans. They greatly enjoyed sitting around fires. Apple, with the cash it has available, could easily buy Coca-Cola and even Disney. The first time chewing gum with added sugar for flavor was sold was in 1869, and it was marketed by a dentist named William Sample. The founders of Google were originally convinced to name it Back Rub, which translates to massage on the back. Good thing it ended up being Google. When dinosaurs inhabited Earth, days lasted only 22 hours. Each century, days become 17 milliseconds longer due to the slowing of Earth's rotation. It is estimated that by the year 2050, the population of Africa will double. There will be 2,300,000,000 people living on that continent. The first episodes of the series WandaVision, which have a characteristic style of classic comedy television shows, were filmed the same way they were back then, on sets and with a live audience to record their laughter. The term Deus ex machina is used to identify a storytelling device in which an apparently impossible problem is suddenly solved by an unexpected force. Luxembourg sent 44 soldiers to the Korean War, which was more of a symbolic act since other countries sent thousands, such as the United States, which sent nearly 900,000. Antarctica is the only continent where there are no reptiles. In addition, it has no official time zone. The 3 richest families in the world have more money than all 48 of the poorest countries combined. In Dubai, there was a contest that encouraged weight loss to fight childhood obesity called Your Child in Gold. The winner of this competition received 88.2 pounds of gold. There is a condition that llamas and alpacas can develop when raised very close to humans that causes them to become extremely aggressive. When a caterpillar eats a tobacco plant, it activates a mechanism in the plant that releases a chemical signal that attracts the caterpillar's predators. Jellyfish are made up of 95% water, and some are bioluminescent, meaning they can glow in the dark. In Finland, there are so many reindeer that herders often paint their antlers with special reflective paint to prevent car accidents. Chocolate was already consumed as a drink more than 3,000 years ago, but it was not until 1847 that the first solid chocolate was invented. Now, it is the most popular way to consume it. The International Space Station, which is constantly traveling at more than 17,398 miles per hour, has more interior space than a 5-bedroom house. The peace flame in Hiroshima has been burning since 1964 and will only be extinguished when nuclear weapons no longer exist in the world. When artist Michelangelo finished painting the Sistine Chapel in 1512, he was paid 3,000 ducats, which were gold coins used at that time in Italy. If we calculate the equivalent in current gold value, it would be $500,000. Rock singer Alice Cooper wanted to capture the best 3 minutes of life in a song. After thinking about it for a while, he came up with the song School's Out for Summer, which talks about the end of classes and the beginning of summer vacation. In most watch advertisements, the time shown is 10:10 because the position of the hands makes the brand look better. Contrary to what people think, people in the Middle Ages did not smell that bad since they liked to bathe. There were public baths where they could go immerse themselves in hot water, similar to the public baths that still exist today in Japan. Before becoming an actor, Vin Diesel was an expert breakdancer, gave classes and all of that. This became known after someone found a video cassette from the 1980s where Diesel can be seen thinner and with hair showing his dance moves. Director Christopher Nolan said he based the Joker's makeup style on the works of painter Francis Bacon. Bacon liked to paint highly distorted faces. Almost one-third of the total surface of planet Earth is partially or completely desert. The Savannah cat is the largest domesticated breed of cat. It can weigh up to 39.7 pounds, and its behavior is more similar to a dog because they like to do things such as fetching a stick and bringing it back. The former leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-il, father of current leader Kim Jong-un, declared at a dinner in the year 2000 that he had invented hamburgers and that they would be a gift to his people. He did not call them hamburgers even though they looked exactly the same. He called them gogyeobang, which means double bread with meat. Due to the speed at which it travels, astronauts on the International Space Station witness approximately 15 sunrises and 15 sunsets every 24 hours. That really is crazy. If the sun were the size of a cell, the Milky Way, which is the galaxy we are in, would be almost the size of Russia. This gives us an idea of how gigantic the universe can be. The government of Romania attempted to include witches among professions required to pay taxes to help address the country's economic recession. People who fall asleep in a car for any reason must leave the windows open at least 1.18 to 1.57 inches because oxygen can gradually run out and there is no way to notice it. During the times of the Roman Empire, life expectancy if you lived in a city was only between 20 and 30 years of age. Jellyfish can clone themselves. If they split in half, 2 or more organisms can form from the original jellyfish. Each year, more than 45 billion chopsticks are used in China. The good thing is that they are made of wood and are biodegradable, unlike plastic utensils. In Amsterdam, there is a giant Adidas shoebox that has a store inside. From time to time, similar stores have appeared that are dismantled a few days later. If the sun were hollow, you could fit 1,300,000 Earths inside it, something that helps us understand the true size of the star of our solar system. Out of the 338 known species of hummingbirds, 50 are native to Costa Rica. The most powerful supercomputer in the world can only perform 0.002% of the operations per second that the human brain is capable of performing. Sea turtles have the ability to sense Earth's magnetic fields. They use it like a GPS to know where they are, which is why they never get lost. After 4 years of planning and working during the nights, students at MIT turned the Department of Earth and Planetary Sciences building into a giant game of Tetris. Each window served as a pixel. In the city of Boston, United States, there are poems hidden in the pavement that can only be seen when it rains. Birds have never been taken into space because they require gravity to swallow their food. The word Kummerspeck is a German term used to describe the weight gain someone has from eating too much during emotional moments, such as when you eat an entire tub of ice cream while crying after a breakup. In general, the white lines painted on highways measure 9.8 feet, and the space between them is 29.5 feet. These measurements help drivers calculate speed and distance visually. This is how Brussels sprouts grow, and although they are not everyone's favorite vegetable, they are very nutritious. Canada has more lakes than all the countries in the world combined. There is no official count of how many small lakes there are, but it is said there are around 2 million. When Google became a publicly traded company, its founders Sergey Brin and Larry Page lowered their salaries to $1, and it has remained that way ever since. Their income comes from the shares they own in the company. Geese have teeth on their tongues and also on their palates. Basically, their entire mouths are made of teeth. Well, they are not actually teeth. They are structures that help prevent food from falling out while they are feeding. If you observe planet Earth from the surface of the moon, you will notice that it also has phases, in the same way that we see the moon from here. Waxworms are very common insects that evolved to live inside beehives, But they have a unique ability. They are capable of eating plastic and breaking it down into organic compounds. Scientists are already studying how they will use them to get rid of the plastic that humans create. The flag that has gone the longest without changes, making it the oldest flag in the world, is Denmark's flag. The largest anteaters can eat more than 35,000 ants and termites each day, and they do not even chew them. They have no teeth, so they simply absorb them like vacuum cleaners and digest them. Koalas sleep up to 22 hours a day. This is because their eucalyptus leaf diet provides very little energy. Mosquitoes, also known as zancudos, have 47 teeth. The first three-dimensional movie was called The Power of Love, a silent film released in 1922. It also had two alternate endings that viewers could choose by closing one of their eyes. Elephants have an irrational fear of bees. Just the sound they make while flying is enough to scare a large group of elephants. If humans were able to hear frequencies lower than 20 hertz, we could hear our own muscles moving, and it would be very strange. Dr. Soren Sorensen invented the pH scale because he wanted to measure the acidity of beer and create the best beer possible. Ants use war strategies when they fight other ant colonies. For example, they first send the weakest ants into battle. Dogs can guess what time you will arrive home based on how much your body scent has faded, if you have a regular schedule. Walt Disney liked to visit his amusement parks disguised in old clothes and a farmer's hat. He would go on the rides and measure the time to make sure employees followed the correct procedures. In 2014, photographs of the atomic bomb's construction were revealed. In them, you can see how technicians signed their names on the device before it was dropped. The village of Viganella in Italy is covered by the shadow of the Italian Alps. So, to solve this, they built a giant mirror controlled by computer to point at the center of the town and reflect sunlight. In 1967, Australian Prime Minister Harold Holt disappeared after leaving his home to swim at the beach. He was never found. Today, a public swimming pool bears his name. 7,000 years ago, the Sahara Desert was a prairie or a grassland full of vegetation suitable for agriculture. In Brazilian prisons, inmates can reduce their sentence by up to 48 days each year for every book they read, including submitting a detailed report. Our brain takes 80 milliseconds to process information. That means we live 80 milliseconds in the past. The name Antarctica comes from the ancient Greek word for bear, arctos. An average United States citizen will eat 35,000 cookies in their lifetime. This equals more than one cookie per day throughout their life. So far, there is not a single documented health problem in any person from consuming genetically modified foods. On the contrary, by making foods not require antibiotics or pesticides thanks to genetic modification, they are less harmful. The McLaren P1 car has such good aerodynamics that it creates more force than the entire car weighs. When it goes very fast, the rear wing hides to prevent the suspension from breaking. The first time overtone singing was recorded was in 1929 in a song called Lonely Cowboy by Arthur Miles. Overtone singing is when you can sing two tones at once using your throat, and it is popular in traditional Central Asian music. The largest festival held each year in the Faroe Islands has an attendance of around 10,000 people. This place has 50,000 inhabitants. That means 1 out of every 5 people living in that country attends this concert. 90% of Canada's population lives within 46.60 miles of the United States border. There is a Burger King restaurant in the city of Mattoon, Illinois, United States, that opened in 1959 before the chain we know today was created. By law, there cannot be another Burger King within 15.5 miles of the original Burger King. Sea cucumbers can throw out their digestive system if they get upset, although it grows back later. This mechanism is called evisceration and serves to distract or scare away predators. Canadian law states that no passenger may leave an airplane without a parachute. The toothpaste and toothbrush company Colgate once attempted to extend its brand to frozen foods, although it never actually launched them. The New York Times published a report in 1939 claiming that television would be a sales failure because families did not have enough time to gather and watch it. Because they used papyrus that degrades very easily, practically all Phoenician writings were lost. By the way, the Phoenicians invented the alphabet from which many others are derived, including the one we use today. Despite being only a cosmetic detail, Cockroaches in the video game Half-Life have artificial intelligence that makes them search for food and react to different creatures and environments. Rubber bands tend to last longer if they are stored in a refrigerator. Tiger Woods has been ranked #1 in the world golf rankings for 683 weeks, not necessarily consecutively. Currently, he is ranked 7th. According to a study from the University of Westminster in the United Kingdom, watching a horror movie can make you burn up to 200 calories, the same as a 30-minute walk. Apples float in water, but pears sink. Apples are 25% air, which is why they can float. Venus is the only planet that rotates in the opposite direction of the others in the solar system. The first drinking straw was designed to have a diameter smaller than a lemon seed. Its inventor was tired of swallowing seeds while drinking lemonade. The first time a hockey goalie mask was used was when a goalie was hit in the face with a puck and refused to return to the ice unless they gave him a mask. In 1983, an F-15 plane was able to land after colliding mid-air with another plane, which destroyed its right wing. Even the builders of this jet thought such a maneuver was impossible. Scotland is closer to the North Pole than Alaska, even though it appears otherwise.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.